This week at the PBA Pete Weber Missouri Classic, it went from bad to good to almost really good. We balled on the Weber pattern, 45 feet, pretty normal long pattern shape. The tricky thing this week was the bowling center. The surface here has a ton of friction, ton of early friction, which means like every year when we ball here, your ball picks up super early and the lanes get super tight down lane. And with 45 feet and a lot of oil this week, that was certainly the case too. In the practice session, it felt like on the fresh you could play a little bit everywhere on the lane. I even had a little bit of a look like going straight up the gutter that I actually considered trying in qualifying. The only thing was when I tried it in qualifying, I had one shot hook high, and when you're playing like up two, 3, if you start using a little bit of angle towards that spot, it might not come off depending on how the pattern is. And I wasn't quite certain that if I moved like, let's say 2 boards left in that spot, that it was gonna hook off of there. So I kind of decided on playing more towards the middle part of the lane, which was what everyone was doing this week. Again, on the fresh, you could do a little bit of everything, and then as the pattern broke down, players migrated further and further left, eventually got into lofting the gutter, but you couldn't really throw it to the right, at least not very far to the right, because of all the oil down lane and all the early friction. The ball just simply wouldn't come back if you tried to really throw it to the right, at least later in the block. So a lot of friction, and the pinfall here is a little tricky at times. Like if your ball does the right thing, you have a very wide pocket to strike on, but at the same time you can always also leave a lot of flat 10s and weird like light hits, and so if your ball wasn't doing the right thing, it could be really tricky and very hard to get more than 9, which is also why the scores weren't, for most players in the field at least, weren't super high this week. But moving on, the first day of qualifying, I got off to a pretty decent start. I threw an Iron Max up the track to get off to a good start with 220. Migrated left from there, and got off to a decent start the first 3 games. I actually think I was in the cut, the top 24 cut, after 3 games with about 660. But then kind of ran into trouble as we started moving further left. In the moment, I felt like I was missing left on a lot of shots. I had a lot of shots go high, barely had any shots go light actually in those 3 games. And it just felt like I couldn't really create any kind of hole. And then when I got it through that spot, it wouldn't hit. So I had a really hard time stringing strikes for those 3 games, and just kind of never really went anywhere. So my score ended up being a little bit lower than I was hoping. I think I had 1235, which put me about 50 pins out of the cash number and about 80 pins out of the cut number. It wasn't the start I was hoping, even though I felt like I threw the ball decent. In game 6, I was throwing balls like an Attention Star S2 and the balls with a little bit of surface, a little bit stronger balls, because it just felt like there was enough oil down lane to where I needed the stronger balls to have him just pick up a little bit down lane. Then in the last game, I went to a shiny Sen 25, and it all of a sudden got through that spot and actually allowed me to get the ball a little bit further right, because it didn't pick up instantly and start going left, which kind of told me that the shots I felt like I was pulling left was probably just the ball like getting offline super early. But that's so hard to tell, because all of that basically happens in if not the first quarter of the lane, like before the arrows, at least the first half of the lane, and that can be really hard to recognize when you're standing at the foul line. It only takes a couple seconds for the ball to get from the foul line to the pins, so it can be really hard to tell whether your ball is too early or too long. But either way, after that block, I felt like I threw the ball well and had a good idea of what to do on the fresh. So strategy kind of was going into the second day that I needed something that would get through the fronts easier, and maybe even lofting the ball was going to be the go-to move, just to make sure that no matter what ball I threw, I could get it through the front by lofting it a little bit over that. So day 2, I put a little bit of polish on some balls, and I hit a, I have two Sen 25s. I have a 4.5 inch pin up one, and then a 5.5 inch pin down one. The 5.5 inch pin down I left shiny, and then the 4.5 inch pin up I actually put 2000 grit on, because I figured I could go to something symmetrical a little bit later in the block, and if it had a little bit of surface, it would separate it enough from the other Sen 25. Turns out I ended up throwing that straight out of the gate game 1. It just looked good. I was still playing around the track, and I think my first shot just dead hooked. Like, it just hooked at 30 feet. So I was like, and then I think my next shot like left a weak 10. So I basically started lofting it at that point. Lofted it in game 1. Not very often that happens. And just kind of went from there, slowly moving left, kept lofting it. Had a really good look, and had both a really, really good game for 260 game 3, which got me to 720, and all of a sudden I made up what I kind of lost the last 3 games of the first block. But then the trouble kind of started again, and that Sen 25 with a little bit stronger layout and a little more surface just wasn't quite getting through the mid lane anymore, and wasn't quite finishing down lane. So my carry started going away. I kept having to move further left, and the carry just got worse and worse. And I tried going to like the Shiny Sen and a Road Warrior and even a Hustle Rip at the end, and none of them just gave me the look I wanted. Like a lot of like light 7 pins and 10 pins, and just couldn't figure out a way of getting more than a double. Overall, I went 100 over, which was pretty good on this, and got myself from like somewhere in the 50s up to 34th, being like 15 pins out of the cash number, and I think like 60 pins out of the cut number. So all in all, a successful evening. Just didn't quite figure out the last 3 games. I talked to a couple of the Storm ball reps after the block, and we're kind of like, there's really no ball we can drill for those last 3 games. Like if the hustle, like we can't drill anything weaker than a Hustle Rip. And if I have a Shiny Sen and a Road Warrior, I pretty much have every ball that we need. So it wasn't a ball issue. We did talk about a little bit, like maybe using a little more axis rotation, changing speeds a little bit more, and using even more loft. Going into the last qualifying block, and I will say this, after lofting for 6 games, I was actually a little sore. I'm usually not sore after bowling, even the long days of bowling, but I was a little bit sore after bowling and throwing the ball in the air for 6 games. So a little funny story. So we get done with our second block of qualifying. I end that block with shooting 170, and it's like 10 p.m. and a little bit of a bad mood, frustrated because I shot 170 the last game, and just want to get back to the hotel, get a little bit to eat, and then go to bed. So we get outside, and it's cold. It's been snowing, and we get out to the car, and it won't start. So we walk into the bowling center and find someone that was kind enough to give us a jump. So we get the car started, go find some food, go back to the hotel. Next morning, I go out and turn on the car in the morning and it starts. So, all right, everything good. It sounded a little weird, but at least it was starting. So I get ready to go to the bowling center, get out to the car, it won't start. So, so call an Uber real quick, get an Uber to the bowling center while Brian stays back at the hotel and tries to get his car fixed. And yeah, that was a little bit of some of the challenges of being on the road on the PBA tour. It was an interesting day and something you don't really want to have to deal with, but have to deal with. And yeah, what do you think, Brian? It was interesting?
It was something, that's for sure. Yeah. It was something. You know, you're right. You have to deal with it, but I'm tired of dealing with it. How about that? I just want things to go good. I just want my ball to strike every single time. I want my car to work. Is that so much to ask? I mean, come on now. Let's go. Come on.
Yeah, that wasn't really part of the plan. And by the way, if you like my jersey or Brian's very patriotic American flag jersey, you can get replicas of them at Coolwick. Use code TLarsen10 for a discount. And yeah, back to the rest of the video. So we come to the last qualifying block, and the lanes play a little bit different every time we start a block. And this morning they played a little bit cleaner. The ball got a little bit easier down lane. I tried starting with the 1025 again, and it was just a little too clean, a little too weak. So after the first couple frames, I went to a Sublime Focus with a little bit of surface. I wasn't lofting the ball at this point because I didn't feel like I needed to. And I managed to get 230 out of the first game, which was a really nice start and kind of gave me the feeling that I have a chance now at cashing and making the cut. I think the second game I bowled 220 something, a really solid 220. But I started not really, like, I had a couple 10 pins and just the ball wouldn't quite go through the pins the right way. But I had a really nice little look to the pocket, which continued game 3. Started with a double, and then I think I went like 10 pin, 7 pin, strike, 4 pin, strike, 4 pin. And then doubled in the 10th for 2-teen. But it was like at that point I kind of felt like I had to try something else that would go through the pins a little bit better. So I went to an Iron Pro, which seemed to hook a little bit more down lane, and it looked really good the first few frames. I went like ring 10, strike, light 10 pin with a messenger in front of it, strike. But then when I missed it left a little bit and got the ball in the oil a little bit, it just went too long. So I think the core was a little too weak in that one. I tried kind of micromanaging it with a little bit different speeds and angles, and I just never was able to get a double that game. Like I would go, like I would leave a 9 pin and then 10 pin, go a little light, leave a 7 pin, and shot a clean 190, really good, like a lot of good shots that game. Just couldn't get it because it wasn't the right ball. I talked to some of the reps again, like what would I do here, and my initial thought was I probably would go to the shiny send just because I needed something that, like with a bigger core. And they talked me into actually going to the stronger send with a little bit of surface on it. I was lofting the ball at this point, like have to say that because basically lofted it from game 2 on. And that was a really good move. It was a little early on, but then after, I think it hooked high, I moved, left the 4 pin, threw a bad shot that hooked, moved some more, got a double, left a flat 10. And after that flat 10, I kind of got my hand more around it, just to have it continue a little more down lane rather than try to switch balls. And I threw a double, left another 4 pin, and threw another double. One of the really big things, annoying things about this block was I didn't trip a single 4 pin, which normally when we're playing this close to the pocket and these kind of straight angles, tripping 4 pins is more like, at least for me, is more of a common hit than on a lot of other conditions. But I didn't trip a single 4-pin disc block, which was kind of annoying because I bowled really, really well this block. Not a whole lot of bad shots. So at this point, I think I'm sitting at 214 over. The cut is, which I found out like halfway game through the 6 games, the cut was 256 over, and the cash line was like 190. So I was well inside the cash line. Needed a big game to get to the cut number. So I went into the last game and got some good intel from Joey, our Storm rep, that pair was hooking a little bit more. Made a 3-board move left and just really tried to loft the Sen 25 pretty far and get my hand a lot around it. It was really, really good. I started with the front 6, which kind of got me in the mindset like I knew I was going to cash, which was my main goal for that block, like getting to the cash line. And all of a sudden, I also knew I had a chance at making the cut. So have the front 6, I throw a pretty good shot, leave a flat 10, which when you're lofting the left gutter and trying to, without having really any angle, you're going to leave a flat 10 at some point. So made that one, go over to the other lane, strike, throw a really, really good shot on the lane I just left the flat 10 on, and left another 4-pin. And in the moment, I probably got a little unfocused. I got a little quick on the spare shot, and the ball hung up on my thumb a little bit, and I missed the spare. In the end, all things being what they were, that spare didn't matter. I wasn't gonna make the cut either way, but I threw all three in the 10th and ended up finishing 28th. I missed the cut by 13 pins and cashed by like 60. I should 247 in the last game. So basically going from not having any idea how to get my ball through the pins the last game, shooting like 190, 180 the 2 prior 6 last games, to shooting 240 was really, really big. And that was, I wish I would have done a little bit more with my distance of loft and my axis rotation in the previous squats. I did a little bit, but I think I probably needed to do it with different balls that would allow me to use more axis rotation. I wish I would have done that earlier. That could probably have got me the last like 15 pins I needed to make the cut. But it was really, really close, really nice to bowl a good game at that spot and throw some really good shots in that situation. So overall, like really close to being a really good tournament, but overall really happy, really relieved to cash and bowl well. This did not feel like a good week to put your thumb in the ball and have a lower than 400 rev rate, because as I said, we had to get the ball through the fronts with loft, and usually when we do that and there's oil down lane, having more ball speed and a high rev rate is a pretty big advantage. And there was a lot of two-handers that did really, really well this week. A lot of high rev rates that did really well. Not a lot of lefties that did very well, but that's a different story. It felt good to execute well enough and stay in my own lane mentally, so to speak, well enough to compete in a week like this. So there's a pretty big relief. All in all, really happy with the performance. Just nice to be back in a position where I feel like I'm competitive. And that was also the last tournament of this little swing. There's about a week off before we go to Reno for the Mike Albee Classic and then the World Series. Look forward to that. And a special shout out, want to give a special shout out to Chris Vai. I bowled next to him this week, and I think he threw like 3 shots in the practice session, then stopped because his back was hurting. And when we started game 1, I I thought to myself, like, why is he bowling? He looks like he's just in so much pain. He was basically not able to walk to the foul line other than being like super upright. It looked like he was just limping to the foul line with pain in his back. And he just grinded through 18 games, qualified 8th, got a bye into match play, and that was really, really impressive. Like, his ball speed was, I don't know, like way less than it normally is, lower rev rate than he normally has, and just looked super uncomfortable for 18 games, and he still managed to be one of the best bowlers in the field. That was super, super impressive to watch. Yeah. Week off, go back home, enjoy the family a little bit, and then off to Reno for hopefully more good results. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll bring you more videos from the PBA tour. And yeah, thanks for watching.